Actors, are you playing a winner's game or a loser's game? In this video, I'll explain what that means as I lay out the pitfalls that beginner actors fall victim to, and what the differences are between amateur actors and professional actors. Everyone, I'm Matthew Cornwell with Get Taped here in Atlanta, Georgia, one of Atlanta's original audition taping services, which I co-own with my amazingly talented, beautiful wife and best friend, Brooke. I subscribe to the Curiosity Chronicle, and I suggest that you do too. Link in the show notes below. In a recent issue, I think back in December of 2024, Sahil, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry if I'm not, talked about a book from 1999 called Extraordinary Tennis for the Ordinary Tennis Player. And in it, the author talks about two different types of tennis games. Amateur tennis is a loser's game, and that is 80% of points are lost on unforced errors. You win by avoiding errors and waiting for your opponent to make errors. On the other hand, professional tennis is a winner's game. 80% of points are won on incredible shots. You win by hitting incredible shots. I like this analogy for actors, even though it's not really that perfect because you're not competing against someone else. It may feel like it at times, but you're not actively pitted against another actor in the room. That would be scary. Okay, so how does this analogy really play out? Well, for amateur actors, and that's not supposed to be a derogatory term, it just means when you're in those beginning stages or those first few years as an actor. During that time, your growth is really about removing blocks, noise, obstacles, etc. See, when you're first starting out, maybe even through that first decade of your career, you are very prone to getting in your own way, causing unforced errors and stunting your growth. And let me just list some of the common ways that actors get in their own way and cause those unforced errors. This sound familiar? You jump too quickly into that first headshot session. You drop $300, $400, $500 on a good photographer, but the shots turn out maybe not so good because you thought it was the photographer's job to make you look amazing. And I don't just mean hair and makeup. They can pose you, they can light you, they can make sure you're in focus. But if you don't understand what your job is at that session, well, then you just made an unforced error. How about this? You're so desperate to be successful that you just jump into that first agency contract that comes across your desk. And this is before maybe you've created a network of trusted peers and mentors that could have helped you vet whether or not that agent was right for you. But too late, you're in a 2-year contract and you're miserable. Maybe your impatience causes you to audition too soon in your journey. If you have an agent prematurely and now you're being submitted for roles on a network television show prematurely, well, now you run the risk of actually getting that audition, laying down a less than stellar audition on your self-tape, submitting it, and leaving a bad impression, a bad first impression with that casting office and potentially many casting offices that could come back to bite you in the form of no more auditions. Related to that, when it comes to self-tapes, early in your career, when you're in that amateur phase, you're going to be tempted to get wisdom from IG Reels and TikTok and other places that will lead you to believe that you need to make bold choices to stand out amongst the sea of actors that you're up against. Maybe you watched that Stranger Things audition with Dacre Montgomery, saw that everyone else has lauded it as the greatest self-tape of all time, and so you think, oh, that's what I need to do. It's too much to unpack this in this video, but suffice to say, that will be an unforced error if you fall victim to thinking that you need to make bold choices to stand out. You're going to get gimmicky. You're going to end up putting a hat on a hat. We did a video about that. And just like the last scenario, you might end up creating a bad first impression with a casting office and sort of end up on a do not see list for a extended period of time. The last example I'll give is that you skip taking classes during this amateur phase because you think there's a shortcut. So you're going to take the 1-day, 3-hour workshops. Maybe you're going to go to that Q&A with that casting director, which you should go to if it's free. But you're going to mistake that for knowledge that will get you to the next stage in your career. And you're going to neglect taking actual classes, ongoing classes, lengthy classes, weeks, months, and years of classes. So in these early years of your career, when I would say you're in that amateur phase, you could have all the raw talent in the world, But if you're not careful, you're going to make a lot of these unforced errors. It's okay. I've been there. In fact, for my very first major Hollywood film audition back in 2003, I had 6 words to say. Somehow I got a call back because my first audition, I just know, was not a very good representation of what acting should be. Anyways, I was still convinced at this callback that it was my job with these 6 words to make an Oscar-winning performance. Thankfully, the director, after the first take, after I tried to ace them with my serve, he gave me a second chance, a second serve, and talked me down. He gave me some encouragement to do less, to just put the ball in play so that I didn't so egregiously make that unforced error. And thankfully, due to that second serve, that second chance, I was able to book that role. But I learned a big lesson about not trying so hard, not trying to be a professional player when I was an amateur. So the lesson for actors that are in this early phase of their career, this amateur phase, is across the board, less is more. I know it sounds cliche, but it is so true, especially if you're in those first few years of your training and of your career. Because if you're looking to book your first 2-line, 3-line co-star on a television show, or your first day player role on a film, I just can tell you with almost absolute certainty that less will be more. Don't do what I did back in 2003 and try to win an Oscar with your 6 words. Just show up. Do the thing and get out. Serve the purpose of the scene and don't try to do anything more than that. You're going to end up with an unforced error. And in general, if you're trying to stand out in your self-tapes, then believe me, less is more. And by less, I mean nothing more than yourself, than your raw, authentic self. No secret sauce, no add-ons or extended warranties. Do less. And I won't give the full pitch here, but our Sam Christensen image process is revelatory in this respect. We've had actors come through the process that had been at this journey for decades, when after they go through the 4 days, they turn to us and say, "Oh, now I know what you mean. I finally know how to just be myself." Huh. And so many actors have heard about this process over the years, but due to their impatience, they put it off because they think something else is their answer now, that there's a different shortcut that maybe they can investigate now, and that someday in the future, maybe when it feels right, they'll do the Sam Christensen process. The 4-day workshop just seems like too much of an investment right now. Ironically, after the 4 days, you'll have made leaps and bounds in your understanding of yourself and this industry, such that you'll have achieved the very shortcut that you are searching for. Bottom line, though, is you have to be patient. Your impatience early in your career is what leads to all of these unforced errors. You end up filling your head with so much noise. And some of that is the noise of all the voices you're listening to, all the articles you're reading, all of the videos that you're watching. But really, the problem is the noise that starts to go round and round inside your head. That voice inside that says, success has to happen now. The red carpet has to happen tomorrow. I got to be on that late night show or winning that award by next year. I have to book this audition or that audition. I'm special, right? Right? Think about bamboo. Before it shoots 80 feet out of the ground in the span of just a couple weeks, it spends so much time hidden under the soil. You can't skip that hidden work. If you try to sprout up too quickly, well, you won't have roots and you'll end up withering faster than you shot up. Now, for seasoned pros, people who have been at this years and have a lot of training under their belt, a lot of experience, well, you still have a lot of that noise that's potentially trying to vie for its position inside your head, but hopefully the fact that you've been doing this for so many years, you've figured out mechanisms for keeping those voices at bay, all the different people that are talking to you and all of the internal monologues that are happening. You hopefully have found ways of centering yourself, reminding yourself of why you're doing this, so that those voices aren't screaming at you and taking up all of that bandwidth. And assuming that you do have that, well, then this allows you to free up a lot of your mental resources so that you can start playing the winner's game in this tennis analogy. So What is the winner's game, Matt? Well, once your foundation is solid and you've mastered the ability to not make all those unforced errors, it frees up a lot of mental resources so you can start to get more proactive in hitting those amazing shots that end up in those points. Well, as an actor, it means that you are now able to make more specific choices and be more discerning in your auditions for when it's time to add some of that secret sauce and add a little bit more nuance or a little bit more backstory or a little bit more complexity to a role so that it starts to have more of that guest star or top of show or supporting character energy to it. And it's not so much about just fitting in, getting out, and moving on. For example, the amateur who is doing well has gotten very good at taking that one-page audition for server and not making a meal out of it. Pun intended. They get in, they say their lines, they get out without trying to distract. Certainly without trying to steal focus from the lead. They've learned how to just serve the story and move on. Whereas the professional will be discerning on when it's appropriate to look at the same script or a script that is the same number of lines and think, you know what? This is a doctor. This is a pilot for a doctor show. And even though it says co-star one day, one episode, one scene, 5 lines, there's some evidence here. I can see the potential, the finished product. I can see how me adding a little bit more to this audition, and the more is way too big of a concept to unpack in this video. But when you're at that place in your career, you understand what that more is. It's about taking that co-star energy and transitioning into guest star energy and adding more interest to this read, because based on your discernment, that this is one of those times to do that. It makes sense because you see the potential for this to become more than just that one-page character. But again, that discernment takes time and experience. And so if you're still in that amateur phase of your career, you should not be messing with this. You should be focusing, when you see 5 lines or less, you should be focusing on less is more, less is more, less is more. The other nuance to being a professional is not necessarily what happens between record and stop, but how it relates to the rest of your career. This could mean seeking out additional representation in a different market if you're the type of actor that really wants to travel, really wants to break into other markets. Well, you can get proactive about those moves because you're now ready for those moves. It might just mean that after you've gone through the Sam Christensen process or just done similar work to really get in touch with your brand and how you are perceived by casting, by directors, by the industry, by the world, that now you get really focused and targeted on where your career is headed. This is where you could bring in a manager to the mix, or if you feel super confident on what the answer is, you can just manage your own career. But you get more specific, you get more proactive in where your career is going and in educating those buyers on how to perceive you so that you get to build the career that you want to have. Okay, so are you in the amateur phase of your career or the professional phase? There's, of course, gray area in between, but by labeling these two ends of the spectrum, it can be helpful for you to maybe identify some of the pitfalls of where you currently are and how to avoid them. And if you have any questions about this concept, please drop a comment below. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on set.